So, chapter one of our English textbook. Some of the points I wrote down here on my little trusty notebook. In the chapter, it's mainly talking about how smartphones have a giant impact on our lives, and we realize it, but we make excuses for it, which really shows how addicted we are to them. We use them all the time. We always check them. We can't go anywhere without them. My favorite point was in the chapter, the author talks about how he tried to go a day. He would go places without his phone or something, but he was always worried about he would miss something important would happen, and there would be an emergency. And I feel like that's really important to society. Is you never want to go anywhere without your phone. Goes on to talk about a little bit of the author's teaching career and how even though he specializes in technology and all this different stuff, he still realizes that there's a problem with technology and how we're really addicted to it. And then they go on to him and a colleague study how the narcissistic behavior connection between students and how often they use their phone, and they thought that the more screen time they would have, it would show on the MPI 40 that they would have more narcissistic traits. But this actually turned out to be false, and it was shown that students that actually averaged less screen time had more narcissistic traits than people who use their phone a lot more. And they believe this was because because people, when they're in their surroundings, they want to be the focus on it and they want to be involved. But when you're on your phone, you're actually detached. So it's not like they're being focused on when they're on their phone. Sure, they might be getting focused on, but it's not from the people around them. They want to be the center of attention all the time. Another thing they talked about was narcissistic values were found more in males than females, and they didn't really know why. Two questions they used to study narcissism in students was they would ask people if the thought of ruling the world was frightening to them, or if they ruled the world, they could make it a better place. And I think those are brilliant questions to ask someone, because a lot of people would say it scares the hell out of them, but there's those small group of people that would always complain about stuff, and they always say they can do stuff better. How does this affect me, and how does this reflect on me from this chapter? I think this is an awesome study. The study, I think, was great. I wish I could have been a part of it to see where I ranked on the MPI 40. I think it's really important nowadays to understand that we as a society are super connected to our phones and super addicted to our phones. And it doesn't matter if we try to go on like a little tolerance break or what, because nowadays everyone's addicted to something. Everyone gets addicted super easy, and it's normally too late before they realize it. What else? We always are checking our phones and our screen time, and ever since reading this chapter, I did it before, but I stopped. I would look at my screen time, seeing what I'm spending the most time on, if it's Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. But now I'm really being self-conscious to average below, because I realize whenever I'm on my phone more, I'm not really getting my homework done. I'm procrastinating, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Okay, so the last thing, connect. This goes hand in hand with a lot of stuff we've been doing in class, a lot of the readings, a lot of the writings, because we're always talking about how, and some of them it's talking about how, as a society, we're being influenced by our phones constantly. So if we're not using our phones as much, we'll be less influenced by what we're reading, what we're looking at on our phones. So I think this goes hand in hand and really just hammers home the point that we have to be less attached to our phones and not use them as not getting amputated from our phones, but just being an extension of ourselves, but not necessarily having the phone be as part of one of us, but just to have it as a tool. So yeah.